Okay, so greetings everyone. We are from Group 6 and today we will present our materials that is logical fallacy. Next. Okay, so before that though, um let us introduce ourselves. My name is Jovin Satrian.
Name is Dianita Atika Putri.
My name is Febrian Rahmadani.
My name is Fariz Alrizal.
And
Next.
my name is Fidela Larissa Evelina Valda.
Okay. So what are we going to explain today? We are going to explain to you three common fallacies, which is false dichotomy, begging the question, and equivocation. So we are going to give you definition, example of those fallacies, and we will give you many tips on how to avoid those fallacies. Next. Okay, so what is false dichotomy? So false dichotomy is a logical fallacy where someone presenting two choices when more than two choices exist. It is based on a premise that erroneously limits what options are available. False dichotomy is specifically an informal logical fallacy, which means that its fallacy lies not in the structure of the logic, but rather in something else. The source of the error is not just due to the form of the argument, as is the case of formal fallacies, but can also be due to their content and context. So fundamentally, the false dichotomy is a logical fallacy because it is untruthful, which means it cannot be used in a logical argument. Because for an argument to be valid, its conclusion must simply follow from the premises. And for the argument to be sound, it must be both valid and true. Next.
So the next is the example of the false dichotomy. This is the first example. Watching TV versus reading books. We must choose between relaxing by watching TV or reading books, which is tiring. But the reality is, there are educational TV shows or documentaries that can increase our knowledge. Additionally, we can choose to read light and entertaining books. Next, second examples. So the second examples is the social media versus the real world interactions. We must choose between being active on social media or focusing on real world interactions. The reality is, social media can be utilized to stay connected with friends and family, but we must also make time for face to face socialization. Next. Okay, this is the three tips to avoid the false dichotomy. The first one is consider the other side of an argument. Before dismissing someone's argument as incorrect, consider if they make any good points. Don't write off an idea as the opposite of truth. without serious examination. Second tips, don't force your readership to pick sides. When you present a choice to your reader to join or not join you, you might be committing the fallacy of false dichotomy. Instead, present your argument and then allow your reader to develop their opinion organically. The third tips is consider the gray area, the common ground. Before you split something into two camps, examine what this camp might have in common. If two camps share anything in common, then you cannot accurately split the camps in two. To do so, would be false, inflammatory, and potentially dangerous. People are entitled to diverse opinions, and not all ideas and solutions are mutually exclusive. Next.
Okay, so the next fallacy is begging the question. So an argument that begs the question asks the reader to simply accept the conclusion without providing real evidence. So begging the question happens when, first, the argument repeats the same idea in different words, or it is also called circular reasoning. The second, the argument leaves out important assumptions that need proof. And the third, the argument's premises assume the truth of the conclusion instead of supporting it. So the logical form of begging the question is claim X assumes X is true. Therefore, claim X is true. So in simpler language, when someone begs the question, they are not providing real evidence or reasons for their conclusion. Instead, they are just assuming it is true from the start. Begging the question is also called arguing in a circle. Additionally, people often use the phrase beg the question to criticize an argument for being weak or poorly reasoned. However, this discussion focuses on its precise definition as a logical fallacy rather than its informal use. The next is the example of begging the question. So here's the statement. Reading is fundamental because it is essential to understand written text. So we can divide it into two parts. The first one is premise. The premise here is reading is fundamental. And the next is the argument assumes its conclusion within its premise, making it a circular reasoning. The second example is the statement, I will not vaccinate my child because I don't believe in vaccines. The statement assumes that personal beliefs are more important than scientific evidence demonstrating the safety and effectiveness of vaccines. As we know that vaccines have been scientifically proven to be safe and effective in preventing various harmful diseases, refusing vaccination based on personal beliefs can endanger oneself and others, especially children who are vulnerable to diseases. Therefore, the statement is considered as begging the question.
Now, tips to avoid begging the question. Number one, write out your premises and conclusion in a short outline like form. For the first step, look for gaps between premises and conclusion. The second step, write down the statements that would fill those gaps. And the last step, for the first tips, if the statements are controversial and you have just glossed over them, reconsider, reconsider your argument. Now for the second tips to avoid begging the question, Check to see whether any of your any of your premises basically say the same thing as the conclusion, but in different words. And now for the last tips to avoid begging the question, be open to criticism. You must be willing to accept criticism of your argument and revise it as necessary. This can help you identify and correct any instances of begging the question in your own reasoning. The lesson learned for this section, begging the question, you cannot just assume or use as uncontroversial evidence the very thing you're trying to prove. Next. And now we have come to the last section of our explanation, which is the equivocation. The definition of equivocation, or calling two different things by the same name, is an informal fallacy resulting from the use of a particular word or expression in multiple senses within an argument, whether it is in an ambiguous way or to mean two or more things. Equivocation is often spelled out in this format. If X is Y and Y is Z, then Z must be X. What is the purpose of the equivocation fallacy? Equivocation is often used as an obfuscation strategy. Another term you might know, so to speak, refers to equivocation. You can identify this logical fallacy in writing by examining an argument closely to find the gap between the arguer's initial claim and their final conclusion. This can take some dissecting, especially when you're facing an argument that isn't as clearly spelled out. Next.
Okay, there is some examples of equivocation. The first is soil is natural. Natural things are good for you, so it's okay to consume soil. Explanations, soil might be natural, but it's not necessarily mean for human consumption. Next. The second, that lamps is light. Light is good for your health, e.g. sunlight. So sitting under that lamp all day is good for your health. Explanations is light from the lamp might be better than darkness, but it's not the same kind of beneficial light as sunlight. Okay, next. So the last is tips to avoid equivocation. The first is ensure that keywords are clearly defined and consistently used throughout your argument. The second is pay attention to the context that the word is used and ensure it retains the same meaning. Next is choose the most accurate language to avoid multiple interpretation. And last, review your argument to confirm that each word maintains its meaning from start to finish.
Okay, I think that's our presentation for today. I hope it is useful for you. And thank you